About a year ago, I built my first PC, and with a whole library of PC VR games, the first game that I bought was Boneworks. That first experience of playing PC VR has always stuck with me, and whenever the topic comes up, Boneworks always comes to mind. I was one of the million people who bought BoneLab the minute it came out. I watched a stream counting down the launch, and stayed up till 2 AM to buy it. BoneLab is great and all, but that will be the topic of the next video. This video is about Boneworks, possibly the most influential title to the medium to date after 5 years since launch. But does the game still live up to its name? Is it good, if not better than most VR titles? We will explore that and more in this video. Let's get right into it. Whoa, look at that, we're almost at 400 subs, so subscribe. You start the game in a warehouse with 3 big monitors. I was looking for ages to find the place to wipe your save, but I decided to do a New Game Plus. But back on the title screen area, there were a bunch of cool details, like this headset that you put on to exit the game, the glass in the ceiling is actually breakable, and there's a bunch of props scattered around the area. It helps the player get accustomed to the mechanics before even starting the tutorial. Boneworks' graphics are decent, there are some shadows and detailed lighting and textures, but BoneLab is just so much better. I always notice that when I come back to Boneworks. But it does the job and it never looks bad. In some aspects, it's actually better because BoneLab has fog everywhere and it looks terrible. But onto the story. Alright, so starting the game, we get a cutscene of our character named Arthur Ford planting a USB into a server. He then goes into a room and locks himself in. He opens a briefcase with an experimental VR headset in it, and places it on his head. Both the USB he planted and the headset are branded with Gammon, showing that he could be backdooring his way into the server via the USB. But I have no coding or hacking experience, so who am I to talk? You load into this laboratory setting, and there's a desk in front of you, and you are confronted with 2 bins to throw stuff in. Here, the player learns to grab items from a distance and how to throw them. But one of the items is that USB that you planted, maybe signifying that the hack worked. You go to pick it up and it vanishes, and you're told to investigate a door switch on the other side of the room. The table in front of you drops and you walk up to the switch and learn how to interact with switches. Everything in this game is so far extremely intuitive and interactive. If there's something that you think you can move or climb, you can. The physics reminds me of Half-Life 2, where similar to Boneworks, you can interact with anything and everything. But the VR medium makes it even more intuitive. You walk through a break room and see some dark void like energy, and you wonder if you're meant to be seeing this. As soon as the thought enters your head, a massive wall quickly covers it up. This shows immediately that the world is not as it seems. Harmful gas is leaking out of a pipe. If you were to touch it, you'll take damage and maybe die. On the pipe, you see a valve, and intuitively, you turn it to shut off the flow of gas. Here you have to crouch, whether that be physically or with one of the thumbsticks. You are led down an alleyway and enter a loading screen for the next level. Immediately, the player learns how to do all of these abilities seamlessly with a tiny amount of tutorial, only letting the player experiment with the physics and figure things out for themselves. Having a physical body with a weight is something that Boneworks did first, or at least did well first. Ford feels relatively weak, but he gets the job done. Making the player feel a bit more underpowered than their direct rivals makes you seem as the underdog and makes it more satisfying when you manage to kill an enemy in hand-to-hand combat. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We start up the second level and see that it is basically the actual tutorial to make sure the player knows exactly what they can do and how to do it. Anyone who made it through the first level quickly will be able to zoom to the museum. There is an achievement for taking your time and pressing all the buttons throughout the level, which is notable to me because I remember spending about an hour playing this level over and over again. I went for it this time, but ended up with 1 shot, but it's fine because I already got the achievement. There is a tutorial on ranged and melee combat, which is pretty typical for a game like this, but what is notable is the lack of a magazine eject button when holding a gun. It is very annoying to not have it, but it's made up for by the mag being ejected when you hold another one up to the gun, so you don't need it. On the way, there's a wall that can be moved slightly, which shows that there are secrets everywhere, further building on the mystery of the previous level. You go through and get introduced to keys and locks. Each key and lock are colorized, and you slot in the key item. There is a puzzle straight out of Portal with a cube and a button that is extremely intuitive. You notice that the museum is a work in progress, with the scaffolding and text. You make it to the gift shop at the end and go to walk out, but there's a barrier. The only way out is down a garbage chute. Falling down shows the player that there's no fall damage, only damage to your stomach and maybe your carpet if this is your first VR game. You fall to the bottom of the chute and land in the streets. You see a bunch of dead enemies called nobodies. After learning all the basics, you're put to the test. You see your first enemies and have to find your way to the end of the level, whether that be over this wall and riding the cleaning crane or walking through the streets. I always ride the crane because it's the most fun. You chuck a sentry drone down in the streets, then the crane goes to pick it up, and if you jump on it when it's down, it'll take you right to the end. This is technically unintended, but is way too fun not to do, and it's easy to learn. But it is worth noting that I've done some amateur speedrunning of this game, so I might be skipping over some stuff in the game. But if you don't make it over this fence here, you have to do a hard slow motion jump. Speaking of slow motion, it's a thing in this game. When you press X, you will enter the first level of slow-mo. If you hold it down, you will stay in this state. But if you press it again, you enter the second level, all the way up to the third level. Release the button and everything will turn back to normal speed. When you die, you enter slow-mo and have to kill a monster within a time limit to come back. This system is pulled right out of Borderlands, with the second wind mechanic. You go up these stairs and go through the door to the next level. You start in a building off the streets. You press this button to open the door, immediately you see a clone of you, which is very strange. He tosses you a gun before the door he's in front of closes, and if you're skilled enough, you can actually make it under the door and see the four disappear. Here you will see hologram enemies, who remind me of the Combines from Half-Life. Also, if you do the skip in the streets level, then you see active null bodies for the first time in this level. They're cool enemies, about equivalent to Ford, but the gun makes light work of them. I got lost while trying to get to the end a few times and skipped this puzzle with this slow-mo jump. After that jump, there's a bunch of hologram enemies whose aim was on point and I died. But I eventually killed them all and slid down this slope and encountered the Ford zombie, who looks just like Ford but is blue. They can take so much damage before dying. It can be extremely overwhelming in large numbers, as we'll see in the next level. Before the end of this level, there's this really cool spinning set piece with saw blades spinning in one direction and bars spinning in the other. In this level, we see the elusive Boneworks crates that contains a collectible. There's one or two in each level and are hidden out of the way or in hard to reach places. At the end, you drop down this sewer opening and walk in. This level is great with a fun speedrun route where you smash a window and run out of bounds, but I decided to take the normal way this time around. I think that I should bring up the jank of the weapons. Sometimes the magazine just doesn't enter the gun and it just kills the pace of a fast gunfight. The melee is fun but flawed. Saints and Sinners is the prime example of great melee combat. There's a bit of aim assist to make sure you satisfyingly hit the enemies every single time. It makes the combat feel so much better, and you do not even notice it in normal gameplay. Here, you'll be missing and flailing around to hit them. When using your fists, you'll just miss. It feels so unsatisfying when it happens, but it can be remedied by skill, which makes it feel even more satisfying when learned. The next level takes place in a sewer system that has very little light. You're given a flashlight to navigate around, but I find it more fun to go without it and fumble around in the dark. You see these green null bodies who love watermelons. I'm pretty sure there's some lore surrounding these guys and watermelons, but I'm not going to go into all of that. This level really drags on. You walk through hallways, open area with a bottomless pit, a sewer pipe maze, more hallways, a bridge over a massive pit, more hallways, large area with tons of zombies, going through vents, and finally a second sewer pipe. It just keeps going. Just when you feel like it's over, there's still another section. But here we see a variant of the Ford zombies that have a blue glowing orb in their hand. They throw glowing energy balls at you from a distance that does a ton of damage. They kill you in 2 hits, and with multiple of them around you, you'd be surprised how fast it happens. Knocking the enemies into bottomless pits is a lot of fun, and we also see these head crab things, which attach to your head and kill you. You have to pull them off if they grab onto your face. I think that they are cool enemies, but they're extremely annoying when there are more than one of them. This level tests a player on their combat skills and can be tricky at times, but with enough trial and error, anybody can make it through. But you go through the final sewage pipe, there's a bunch of enemy ragdolls dropped in, and you just have to slide to the end. Warehouse is the next level. There is this big warehouse that you need to find a way inside of. Inside are weapons, enemies, and most importantly batteries to access the next area. The best way in is through a window, and I'm pretty sure that you don't even have to go into it. I think you just jump over these fences to completely skip over it. The freedom to make your own solution is why Boneworks is so replayable. I have played this level countless times and my experience is always different from the last. But after that section, you see a bunch of projected enemies. It's more chaotic combat. Ducking behind cover and returning fire is fun as always. You see this train, so you can make a run for it or make sure all the enemies are taken care of. But once you're in, you push the switch forward to make it move and you speed forward towards the portal to the next level. The next level starts where we left off, in the train, but we're at a stop. It takes place in a subway. The level design is like a maze. There are multiple branching paths. It's extremely easy to get lost and the rooms are filled with enemies. This level has many different ways of going about it. There's this one section where you're in a car and have to get past this wall, but there's a problem. It's a wall, but there is this button up here. What if I shoot it? So you do it, and just like that it opens. If you're skilled enough, you can actually do it while riding on the car. When I found out you could do this, my mind was blown. It really shows off how interactive the game is. After that, you go through a train and open a door. You have to find your own way to the end, whether that be crawling through vents or finding keys. On the way there are long corridors with sentries firing at you. Once you make it to the end, it's on to the next level. Tower is one of the most notable levels in Boneworks. It requires the player to climb their way to the top of the level. You start by collecting keys for doors and climbing up these steps. The entire time, there is countless holograms and zombies trying to stop you. Searching for the items while trying to survive is why I remember this level so much. Another reason I remember this level is because of how laggy it can be at times. And whenever testing my overclocked GPU, I would always load up this level because of how many enemies and how large it is. While recording, it didn't perform very well and Boneworks' auto resolution kicked in, and it made it look like a Game Boy Advance game. But the frame rate was consistent, so it wasn't that bad. There is this cool part with a ton of zombies having a party with a key in the middle of the crowd. After that, the final stretch of the level features many holograms in a frantic run to the end. And at the end, you ride this elevator into the loading zone and move on. Time Tower is probably the most broken level in the game. There's this giant ball in the middle with multiple phases and enemy spawns, but none of that matters because you can just grab this stick, fly up here and drop down. That's it. Level's over. I probably only have done this fight once normally during my first playthrough. I thought that it was alright, but not good enough to not skip over it. After that insanely difficult level, we're faced with a cutscene where Ford transfers his consciousness into the void. I don't know the story of this game, it's confusing, but we see Ford doing stuff like force grabbing while his physical body is slumped over in his chair. The next level, you spawn in this jail cell. You see a copy of yourself that mimics your movement. There are multiple ways out of the cell. You could get the clone to press this button, or you could move this brick and go out the back. I always take the back way because of how fast it is. You run down this path and jump up this wall. There's this puzzle with a way to block, but you can just skip all that by placing 3 magazines onto the button, then you walk into the portal. This level is really cool. It's an arena wave fighter. There are multiple weapons and King Ford is up there and oh wait, come back. That's it. That's the whole level. Finally, the last level of Boneworks. You spawn in a castle courtyard and are invited inside by King Ford. You have to find a way in. You have to climb up the walls and press this button on top. Once you click it, the door opens and you drop down. You walk through the rooms and there are Ford related stained glass panels. It's a cool touch. You make it to the main throne room and are confronted by King Ford and a crowd of normal Fords. Here is the final boss battle of the game, against yourself. This game feels so surreal during the ending. It is a far cry from the mundane levels at the beginning. There's a final puzzle where you have to pull out this plug with this crane and gravity gun. It took me a while to figure this out my first time around, but once you know the solution, it can be done in seconds. You drop down through the hole and have to run this long stretch and climb up this massive ladder. Or you could just use this gravity gun to fly there. You walk into the room and are met with a cutscene of Ford being found and killed, but you are still alive wherever you are. Is Boneworks overrated? In my opinion, absolutely not. It is my personal favorite VR game of all time. It has amazing physics and gunplay, a great story with fun and creative level design. Definitely, if you haven't given the campaign a try, then download LabWorks on BoneLab or just buy the game. Goodbye.